Good morning. Happy
Morning,
Friday,
morning.
sir.
Peace, King. Welcome, y'all.
Peace
Thanks
to
for
you,
having
King.
me again. I'm Mr. Harrison. That's Mr. Ellis. You know what it's about. And, we just wanted to talk to you guys this morning again. Talk to you guys a little bit about this Chants and Rants idea. And really what it's about is just trying to get you guys to get involved and thinking about discussion and critical thinking in an awesome way.
Absolutely. So today, guys, we're going to set the stage for you, okay? In English class all the time, you've been hearing about claims and thesis statements, right? And yeah, they matter in English class, but what do they mean after that? Nothing, right? Like trigonometry and geometry and all those things that you walk away and you never look at again, chemistry, things of that nature, if you're not in those fields. But we're going to teach today, guys, how a claim and thesis are a big part of everyone's life, because your claim and thesis means you're willing to step out in the world with your ideas and you're willing to bring behind them a karma tsunami of awesomeness of experience and preparation. So these terms, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be revisiting over the next few months of doing these Friday sessions. But for today, we're going to focus on synectic as our main term today. So you understand what synectics are and how they connect, and you'll begin to build your arsenal of knowledge to defend your ideas, claims, and thesis statements. You guys, when we think about a thesis statement, again, in English class, you know it's going to be something, it's going to be very specific, it's going to be clear, it's going to be focused, it's going to be arguable. My big thesis statement for the year with you guys is, if you can win an hour, you can win a year. And each time we meet together, your goal is to win the hour. And each time you win an hour, you'll be closer to winning a year. Just like in sports, each game you win gets you closer to that championship, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to introduce some critical thinking skills for you today and help you to develop some original ideas and thoughts. And, when we talk about thesis statements, we talk about taking a stance, right, Mr. Harrison? Remember back in basketball camp, we were in high school, man? You remember the Chenier Dupree basketball camp? Oh, Coach Kevin Brodus.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about taking a stance. It's all about defense. And right now, we're just modeling for you guys an example of synectics, where most people don't think that basketball or defense would have anything to do with creating a thesis statement. And, what we're saying is that the truth is that they have a lot in common, don't they? And,
Yep.
And like Mr. Ellis said too, the reason why I love talking about thesis statements as well is because it's really about learning how to argue, learning how to have taking a passionate stance on things in life. And then when you're discussing things with people, you know how to articulate yourself, in a great way. So really, the thing that Mr. Ellis and we always talk about is that a lot of sound thesis statements and arguments have to do with one or more of these topics. I call this our chant rant pyramid. If you look at last year, most of the things that are going on around the world, you can connect to one or more of these ideas, okay? So, in my class, we call these like the big five, because, when you're trying to think about social justice and creating a thesis, a lot of times you'll deal with a topic around politics, sports, music, education, media in general, or specifically even the social media, okay? So, and I know Mr. Ellis and we have a lot of passionate things to say about these issues. And we actually want you all to take a stance on these topics in general.
Yes, indeed.
And then like Mr. Ellis mentioned, here's just another example of how playing defense in basketball is like constructing a thesis statement or having an argument. They both require physical activity. And they both require some skill and some technique, and they both require effort, But when it comes to what we're talking about, right, Mr. Ellis, all of this is really to be building a capacity towards being able to create courageous conversations, right?
Absolutely. If you can make a stance and you can join together two different things for the purpose of having an interesting kind of thought, then yeah, you're willing to have that courageous conversation. If you're willing, for example, to tie the influence of Shakespeare in English class to the language of privilege, that's an example of synectic thinking. having that courageous conversation and saying, hey, maybe if people had read the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, they might not have had interest in storming the Capitol because they might have truly understood what it took to raise America and to raise America and the challenge that we have, and for everyone to develop as they have developed to the diverse land that we have today. It takes a courageous conversation to say something like that, to say that Shakespeare is partially responsible in its influence for the language of privilege in America and preventing textbooks that are just as complex, just as deep, and just as intense from having their say. It's a tale of two cities, right, Mr. Harrison?
Yeah, no.
Did you ever read this? You ever read this boring book in school? Did you ever read this 9,000-page book in
Well,
high
that's
school
the
or
whole
college?
thing, right? Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, you're talking about, I know your, should I say, our disdain towards Shakespeare. And I know as an English teacher, how much I've had to, channel it and present it in a refreshing kind of way. But nonetheless, it's old school, just like this book.
But with that said, there's still some knowledge to be gained from both. And I think the first page of Tale of Two Cities just sums up what we're living right now so well, doesn't it? It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us, yet nothing before us. So pretty familiar to what we're seeing now, isn't it? I mean, how about you guys out there sitting at home, taking this in class? You might have next to you, and if we could pop back to the previous slide there, Mr. Harrison, you might have sitting next to you guys, your brother or sister who's taking their third grade class on the computer, the family computer, while you are on your phone taking AP English or taking AP World or whatever you're taking yourself on your phone while you're trying to keep your younger sibling engaged on the computer. Yet there's somebody in another part of the county, I don't know, maybe up county a little bit, maybe towards the, Bethesda area perhaps, where a student might have a tutor sitting next to them, feeding them the answers. It's a tale of two cities.
I've been thinking about that this entire time, just in terms of how for some people this might be more of like a vacation, and for others, they're maybe on the front lines and having to deal with some of the realities of a global pandemic on a much more serious level. So, when we talk about the tale of two cities, right? Like we were thinking about this in so many different aspects, synectically thinking, what would this book have to do with today? Well, when you read those first lines, ladies and gentlemen, you be the one to tell. You be the judge. Sounds a lot like it could be referring to different cities or different places where people live today and how they've been dealing with the pandemic in very different ways.
Absolutely. And so when we see all that play out, I think it extends out to other things as well. I've seen it in my own neighborhood where I live. Kids that tell me they love virtual learning. They love it because they got somebody in their house who's helping them with every single step. They're not worried about it. They can look up every answer on the internet and keep it moving. And oh, by the way, they can then feel empowered enough to go outside and walk with 10 of their friends not wearing masks side by side, not even thinking about the needs of others. It's that privilege extending out and empowers. The privilege that empowers that allowed something like what happened on January 6th to occur. And, we don't have to look much further back in the French Revolution to see the similarities between what occurred on January 6th and what occurred up here. Right. And again, the division within the country right now, the tale of two cities.
Well, like we were saying, and so our challenge for you all, right? So, what we talked about so far, our objective today was to really think about a thesis statement in a broader sense. Okay, because this is really where we're heading. Mr. Ellis and I, we're trying to come together to bring you guys fresh and different ideas, but at the same time also teach you some terms that we both know, you need as you go throughout high school and beyond. Okay, and so we've been talking about synetics, we're talking about juxtapositions, and really what these things basically mean is that You examine two things and you place them together for the just for the sake of critical thinking. Okay, and so in Tale of Two Cities, it was the two cities. It was England and France, or the two countries, should I say?
Yep.
England versus France, and very different realities in terms of what was going on in those two places, and they weren't even that far proximity wise.
Yep.
So then it got us to thinking about, well, what are some other juxtapositions out there? Well, right in the forefront are the Republicans and the Democrats, and that whole political concept and that whole construction of thought as it relates to our country. Okay. And then even just on a lighter note, right, Mr. Ellis? I mean, we're talking about juxtapositions. You know, you and I have looked at the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens as being like some of the premier football teams in terms of how they approach football. And we joke around about it. We go back and forth, but it's a lot of respect. It's a lot of love there, but it's a lot of history there too that we look forward to being able to share with you all about these two franchises and their work that they've done with like society and social justice and things like that.
Taking the stance. Yeah, they've taken a stance.
Yep, both have, particularly the Pittsburgh Steelers owners, which I'm excited to get into at a later date. And then, of course, you know, Mr. Ellis, the Washington football team and the name change and the different juxtaposition that's occurred from that and the way that people have felt our entire lives about that and how it's hard for people our age to probably even call them the Washington football team just because of habit.
Yep, no doubt. So it gives us guys some ground. And so the hope is here as we close this clip out that when we jump back into class here, we're going to ask you guys to think about some juxtapositions in your life. What are some of those two things that sort of clash together that are a challenge of ideals that people can make claims about, that people can make judgments about, that people can make thesis statements about, that people can make controversial statements about?
Yep.
So we'll look for that as we move forward next time. Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's all, right, Mr. Ellis? I mean, we're just, you know, we're going to come, we're going to pop in, we're going to bring these things to you guys. And I just want to say we appreciate the patience with the tech pieces, like we're saying, because I'm learning the tech pieces, like Mr. Ellis.
Oh, yeah.
This has not been ideal, but we're making it, you know, we're making it happen, and we're going to keep getting better each week as we present this material to you all. So, you know,
absolutely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ellis, for letting me be a part of this.
You bet, sir. In the words of the great Dr. King, whose day of service we will celebrate on Monday, always know that you count. Always know that you matter. Always know your voice will drive the moving train. So let's stay on that moving train, ladies and gentlemen. Let's make some strong, assertive, stance-driven claims and thesis statements.
Thanks, guys. I'll see you next week. Chance
Peace
and
out. See you then. Peace out.